Welcome to Medicine Monday, everyone. I am your host, the Freedom Doctor, Roman Johnson. And today I am so excited. I have an amazing Black woman, physician, researcher in the house. And who is this Black woman, physician, researcher? None other than Dr. Andrea Boyd Tressler in the building. And I'm going to jump right in and have Dr. Boyd Tressler introduce herself and tell us her story about how she got to the place where she is now a physician researcher. Dr. Boyd, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Like the Freedom Doctor said, my name is Andrea Boyd Tressler. I'm originally from a small town outside of Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up with two amazing parents who focus so much on education. My dad is white and my mom is Black. And so I also grew up in a very woke household. My dad really supporting and championing our education. And then graduated high school, went to Spelman, graduated in 2009, graduated with my PhD from Case Western in 2016, and then just graduated with my MD this last week, actually, from the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine of Case Western.
Wow, that is so amazing. I want to go back to your background. A lot of folks, when they talk about becoming a doctor, and especially a doctor researcher, they talk about like teachers that inspired them or role models or somebody in their community being a sort of mirror to them. For you, did you have any role models or mirrors in your community growing up to point you in this direction where you are now?
So I think my first champions, like I said, were my parents. My dad really fought really hard to make sure that I was in the best classes, that nobody took a look at me and said, oh, she's not smart enough because she's a little Black girl. He wouldn't have that. He made sure that I think in 7th grade, he spent every day going up to the principal's office, telling them that I needed to be in the advanced reading class and not in the average reading class. And I needed to be in these advanced classes because I was a lot smarter than they were giving me credit for. So he is the first one that really encouraged me and made me believe in myself. And I had other teachers along the way in high school. I had a chemistry teacher who was really what made me fall in love with chemistry and want to go and learn and become a chemist at Spelman. And then at Spelman, I had this amazing mentor, Dr. Dimanja, who just, took me and a few other students under his wing and just taught us to learn how to become scientists and to ask questions and to love really pushing the boundaries and discovering things.
Wow, that's so amazing. And the common thread behind all of those people I hear is really an expectation of excellence. Like they saw that you were already excellent and they wanted to provide the nurturance in the environment where their excellence, I think, could bloom. So that is really amazing. And so I heard you talk about chemistry being, you had a chemistry professor who took you under their wing in a sort of way. Is that how you first got interested in medicine? Or like, what was the guidepost for you at Spelman?
So initially, I went to Spelman. I wanted to become a pharmacist. So I was always interested because I fell in love with chemistry in high school. And so pharmacy was what my ultimate goal was. But I had started this research because of this professor, because of Dr. Dimanja, his encouraging me to do so. And then I took a toxicology class and I just fell in love with drug mechanisms. And because I had already figured out that I enjoyed research, that I wanted to pursue a PhD. And he really encouraged me. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have really pursued the research aspect during Spelman.
Wow. And that professor was DiMaggio?
DiMaggio, yeah.
DiMaggio. Okay. Thank you. I heard that. I think I'm saying it correct.
Yeah.
My Southern tongue, my Southern.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you went to medical school, you got your PhD. What is your PhD in?
It's in biomedical research and in particular pharmacology.
Pharmacology. Wow. So you kind of kept that pharmacology interest.
Yeah.
You wanted to apply it to the clinical or medicine, the medicine. Yeah. Okay, that is amazing. So and tell us where you are now. So you recently finished the MD, and what are you doing now in your life? What are you preparing for?
Yeah, so I'm preparing for residency. I recently matched into general surgery, and I'll be starting at Wake Forest in like a month.
Wow, that's amazing. A Black woman surgeon. That's amazing. Congrats to you. I know that space is, you know, it could be a little bit more diverse. So I'm very happy for your presence in it. And I know that's going to help people who have to have some type of surgery get through it better when they see your face. So that's so amazing. What advice would you give to future medical students or future healthcare workers who are interested in the field of medicine broadly, about like preparation or, you know, mindset? What advice would you give to them?
I think one of the things that really helped me is having a I refuse to give up attitude. We talk a lot about resilience in medicine, but you really have to have resilience because, you know, each day is going to present a different challenge, whether it's studying for 12 hours as you prepare to take the MCAT, or trying to get that great GPA, or getting up the nerve to network and email some big name professor. You know, there's a lot of resilience that you have to deal with, and you have to have in order to make it.
Wow. Okay. So I heard the theme of resilience. I heard the adage, you said, kind of have a, I'm not going to give up attitude. Like, so for you personally, what were some things that you went through in your medical training as a Black woman that got you that wisdom, right? Like, I know you're getting this from somewhere, from some experience. So could you take us to the experience that you learned that wisdom of not giving up?
Yeah, that wisdom actually came during my PhD training, because the PhD is, it's one of the hardest things that I've ever done. I think it's even harder than med school, probably not harder than residency, but I'm not through that yet. But you know, when you're coming from an environment where the amount of effort you put in is equal to what you get out. So you study really hard and you take the test and you get an A, you know, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. With research, on the other hand, you can spend 12 hours in the lab and do hundreds of experiments and still take 7 years to finish, whereas somebody else will spend 8 hours in the lab and they'll finish in 4. And it's really kind of luck of the project that you get and just the question that you're trying to answer and the answers that come from the experiments that you do. So that's not, you know, it's not a proportional relationship. And so during the PhD, I really had to take a step back and look at myself and realize that my self-worth wasn't equal to what the product was that was coming out, which is very different from what we've been taught. And it was really hard, and it was really hard not to compare myself to other people who were getting done faster than I was, and just refusing to give up, and then also surrounding myself with people who wouldn't let me give up, who kept reminding me that I am worthy of this degree, that I am smart, that I am capable. And that's where that resiliency really kind of took shape, was during, especially the later years, year 5, 6, and 7, were the years where really I built that resiliency and that will to just, you have to keep going.
Yes, I really identified for a lot of what you were saying. I think, I have a PhD as well, and, I just finished 10 months ago. And when I tell you that there were a lot of days I doubted my capacity, my intelligence, that I could work this fast and produce as fast as what was expected of me to matriculate through the program and graduate. And you said something, though, that I think will help doctors, academics, anybody whose job is thinking or problem solving in general. Like you said, your self-worth is not connected to your work. Wow. I feel like a lot of people get into academia in medicine proper because their self-worth is bound in the work that they do. And here you already have that wisdom that, you've separated. No, like, I'm worthy because I am, and I deserve this PhD because I deserve it, period. And that is that's a really beautiful recognition. And wow, I'm just gonna sit in there for like 10 seconds, because that's how much it helped me. That's so great. That's so great. Thank you. So you just talked about your obstacles. I'm gonna give an anecdote that I think is a common to a lot of PhD students, a lot of medical students too. I think sexism is a real thing in PhD training, doctoral training, medical training. I think racism is a real thing in doctoral training, any type of postgraduate training. My thing is, my question is not always like, it's not if racism exists, but how do we get around it? And I'm wondering if you experienced any racism in any of your like graduate training, and if so, how did you get around it?
So I've been pretty fortunate to not experience it directly. You deal with, some microaggressions, but, as most Black people, we can't really recall exactly what was said to us or, when, but we know that it was said. But I think for me, I see it more in how people approach patients, how the education approaches patients, and seeing other students talk about these issues and these ailments that are racist, cloaked in medical terms. So, for example, talking about end-stage kidney disease and how the studies say that you have a worse outcome if you are African American, but and people cling on to that. They say, well, you're Black, so you're going to have a worse outcome, but they don't talk about the socioeconomics that lead to the worst outcome. So it's not something inherent about being Black that makes the outcomes worse. It's because there's poor transportation, there's poor resource access. All of these things lead to poor outcomes. And, you know, our education system really is focused on what's the end and not really what is causing it. And so, you know, it's been really eye-opening through my education to see that, but it's also been disappointing to see classmates who will, in discussion, claim all of these facts as truth without being willing to discuss, you know, the intricacies of why this happens.
Yes, that is so good. And I just want to reiterate something you said. So as a health scientist, like this is important to me, and that's exactly right. Like there's a lack of nuance understanding about health disparities in general, right? So yes, like race is not a predictor of health disparities. It's really racism, because racism created the category of race, right? So, you know, that's really on point, and definitely it is so true that medical students in general, a lot of them don't unpack their what do they call it in the what do they call it, unconscious biases, right? I just say racism, that they don't unpack their racist ideas of the world when they go into the clinical setting, right? And that's why they're not willing to unpack that in the classroom. There's a 2016 study by Hoffman and others, I believe, that talked about how in medical education, there was a finding that I want to say in this article, medical students rated, or the findings was basically like Black people can endure more pain, or they have higher pain thresholds. And like this idea is really connected to the history of enslavement and dehumanization in this country. So yeah, I was trying to translate that in a way that was very lame and not confuse my audience. So yeah. Wow. Okay. So I wanna pivot and now talk about why. So we talked about racial discrimination broadly, right? We talked about it in the hospital setting, in the clinical setting. Why do you think it's important, then, as it relates to racial discrimination, that people are enduring, that Black and brown people enduring in hospitals, right? Why is it important to have Black and brown physicians then?
It's important because, you know, we are able to reflect what they know. You know, you feel more comfortable with something that you're familiar with. You're more likely to trust, you're more likely to open up and tell your doctor what's actually happening and how long it's been going on if you trust the person. And you think that they're not going to judge you, if you think that they understand you to a degree. You know, I will never fully understand what it's like to grow up in the projects, or, you know, in poverty, but, you know, I'm able to connect with people who have been in those situations. And, you know, I think that that's important, to really be able to empathize with your patients, and not saying that white physicians are not able to do that, but there's just something that, you know, there's a different understanding when you have a patient, when you have a physician who looks like you. You trust them more, you feel more comfortable around them.
Exactly. And I think when you're empathizing with your patients like you do, like you can see more than you normally would, because you are priming your eyes to see beyond, you know, the discrimination that is programmed in the education, whether you're Black or white. Like we have racist ideas being taught to us. And so, yeah, like I'm really like so interested in that. And I want to also say that like when it comes to racial discrimination, I think that no matter what class background people are in, when they're people of color, they face similar outcomes in terms of discrimination. I remember there was a story about Serena Williams's
Yeah.
maternal challenges in just dealing with the doctor being ignored, and things like that. And when we know that Black women in general have higher maternal mortality rates, and racial discrimination is definitely connected in that. So yeah, so and now transitioning from discrimination and back to your future training, how do you feel going into your residency? Your residency is in general surgery, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How do you feel about the environment, given your like social locations as a woman and being a person of African descent?
So first, in general, I'm nervous of taking care of patients for the first time as a real doctor, but
Doctor.
real physician. But I think that one of the challenges that I've seen my Black female colleagues endure is not being listened to, or being confused as the janitorial staff, or housekeeping, just having your title and your expertise belittled. But at the same time, I'm really excited because there's a network of Black people throughout the hospital that are rooting for the Black physicians, from the cafeteria staff who are just rooting for you, excited to see you doing well and making them proud, even though they don't know you. It's heartwarming, and it's very, I feel like having that support system of all the Black people who work in the hospital in the background rooting for me is gonna be amazing. So hopefully, as the microaggressions and outright racism happens, I can counter that with all the support that I get from everybody else.
That's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that, like going there with us, and also shout out to the cafeteria workers and janitorial staff that make our lives easier, and feed us and make our just work environments a clean, orderly place. So
yes, and then also the nod, everybody, you get the nod when you're walking down the hall.
Yes, the nod is infamous. I mean, and speaking about the nod, like even in Boston, where it's a really white city. Like now, a lot of people of color live in my neighborhood. When I see Black people, we nod at each other, and that makes me feel home in a strange land, right? So
yeah,
man, that's so awesome. So wow, like you share with us like your background, some of the experiences you've had, where you'll be going in the future, what you'll be doing at Wake Forest as a general surgery resident. In the last 10 minutes, are there any words of wisdom that you would give to women and Black women in general, anybody who is working on, either a future medical career, any future career that takes work to make happen? Are there any words of wisdom that you could give to those people in this moment?
Yeah. So I think for, particularly my non-traditional students who are, have been out of school or they did another degree, listen to that little voice. If there's something that's telling you that you want to be and it doesn't go away no matter what else you do, follow it. There was a little voice in me that said, you need to become a doctor. And then I kept pushing it away. I kept being like, no, I'm doing the PhD. I'm going to become a postdoc. I'm going to become a PI. I'm going to run up my own lab. But it never went away. It kept coming back and it kept coming back louder. So listen to it. And then once you find it, I never want to tell people to follow their passion, because I think that can be dangerous, because what if you don't have a passion? I don't say that I'm passionate about medicine, but I really enjoy it. I really like it. But, I wouldn't say that it's a passion of mine in the sense that people talk about what is a passion. But following what makes you happy at the end of the day and makes you feel like you're contributing to the betterment of society, no matter what it is, and you're content with that. And then once you find that, once that little voice tells you what you want to be, and you finally listen to it, find mentors, find people that either look like you and have gone through a similar path, or who just have gone through a similar path, or just somebody who's willing to help. When I decided that I wanted to do med school, I was terrified. I felt like my grades from undergrad weren't great. I felt that, there was all that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome was really strong. But I found somebody he was a Black man. He had his MD and his PhD, but he did his PhD first, and then he went to med school. So I went and I talked with him, and he was able to point me in the right direction so that I could find the right people to talk to make sure that when I applied to medical school, I had everything that I needed. So just, you have to network, you have to find those mentors, those people who are willing to encourage you, because you're going to have those other people that are going to tell you that this isn't worth it, that you're too old, or what about you wanting to start a family? I got all of that. All of these things are, being concerned about financial, which is very real. I had to delay getting a real paycheck for another 5 years, but, I think that it was worth it to follow what that little voice was telling me I needed to do and needed to become.
Thank you so much for that wellspring of wisdom that you just gave us. And also thank you for your time. I know as a resident, y'all don't have a lot of time to spare. So thank you. And thank you, as they was saying in the church, thank you that you did not think it robbery in this moment to speak to us about your life and just how you persevered through people who told you like, yeah, like this is not right for you, and you see it into your inner voice that told you it was. So thank you for listening to yourself, because you're going to make an amazing surgeon, and thank you for everything you do. So,
thank you.
Yes, and that's all I have for today. And for those who may be listening, either now or in the future, feel free to like and share the Freedom Doctor Presents, where you'll find the Medicine Monday shows and the Freedom Friday shows as well. And thank you so much for listening to Dr. Boyd Tressler. We say thank you again. And
Thank you.
we're gonna be out, y'all, because we got things. So let's get free and trust our inner voice, and don't give up, and chase your calling and not your passion. How about that?
Yes, I like that.
So we out. Peace, y'all. Bye.